It is legitimately wild to go from watching the recently released season of Stranger Things to watching it Welcome to Derry, because you realize how much the Stranger Things kids have aged when you watch a show that's kind of the same exact Stephen King vibe, but with actual children. Because it's just like you look at Stranger Things like, man, these are just adults. I see 5 o'clock shadow on some of these characters, and we actually have kids here. It's just a wild dichotomy that is just put on very sharp display, jumping from literally watching Stranger Things to the next show is It Welcome to Derry. It just stood out so starkly to me. Hello, interwebs! I know that wasn't an opening joke, but it was an opening observation, I guess, that I found very interesting. But regardless, we are here to review the latest episode of It Welcome to Derry. This one, episode 6, In the Name of the Father. And this episode is very aptly titled because this is all about daddy issues. And I just want to say this again. I know I've said this numerous times, but it really frankly bears repeating. I am continually shocked by how solidly good this show really is. I was talking to my partner the other day, and she's not watching this show with me. I'm just sort of watching it on my own, and I was like talking to her, and I'm like, yeah, Welcome to Derry is actually really, really good. And she was like, really? Come on, like that seems like stupid slop. And I'm like, no, it's actually like solid. Like I wouldn't say, if it's not something you're directly interested in, like super go out of your way for it, but I would argue it's a really good time, and she likes horror, so hopefully I've convinced her to give it a shot, because frankly, the more I watch the show, I'm just like, yeah, it's really good. And again, maybe it's just because I came into the show at the beginning of the season with very low expectations, but it keeps being like, I keep waiting for the show to like crash and burn or do something stupid or do something absolutely terrible, but frankly, every single week, it's really solid, and I'm earnestly invested in these characters, which is not something that I really would have thought coming into this show. Again, I know I know I'm not like digging into the like specifics of the show right now, and I've said this before, but it really just bears repeating, and this is just another really, really good episode. For a few things that are kind of going on here, let me start first with the kind of obvious one, which is Leroy. We have this opening sequence where he hits Will, because, obviously Leroy's going through a lot. His friend just died, and he's sort of chastising Will and sort of venting his emotions at his son. And obviously he takes it out in the very wrong way of hitting his kid. But you see where emotionally it came from. And I like what he does ultimately is he continually throughout this episode appeals to a sense of country in people and like a greater good, or like, you will listen to me, Will, because I'm your father. He like makes appeals to these sense of hierarchies and institutions that he believes in, and not actually anything that like he stands for or truly like wants to reach out and connect with. And I think that's really an interesting distinction. He does it when he's talking to his wife Charlotte about Will and what happened to Will. And I like that she's ready to leave him, by the way. Like, good on Charlotte. Like, her taking care of her son Will, like even asking him later, like, hey, do you want to talk about what happened with your father? Like, checking in on him. Charlotte's just a fucking great character. I love her. But then when Leroy is talking to her, he sort of starts making an appeal, like, I'm just trying to do what's right for this country. He does it also with Dick, when he sort of tries to get Dick to do his duty, he says. And Dick's like, no, bro, like, I let out this box that the Pennywise just let open and just laughed about it. And you're not really offering me anything other than just like appealing to my sense of duty. He's like, fuck you, this is really dangerous and I could die, and I may not be able to put all this all back in the box. And it just showcases how Leroy, he continually puts country first and these other things first, making appeals to like the nation over family and solidarity with those that the government is literally exploiting. And I just find that very interesting for his character. Again, tying into the whole thing about like black exceptionalism as a dynamic that we talked about in previous reviews that I just found really, really interesting. The other element here is Will. I really like, again, I love how all these things tie together. Like, Will sees Ronnie's connection with her father, Hank, and how invested Hank is in her. Like, even later on when, Will goes to Hank's father, he's like, I want to get to know you, Will, because you seem to like my daughter. And I really liked that moment of, again, Will getting a father figure that he can see, that like model good fatherhood, and I was also treating him with respect as a person and interested in what he wants in a way that Leroy hasn't really shown. In fact, has shown that like he pretends that he knows his son's interest, like the with the astronomy stuff that we saw early in the season, but that was learned from Charlotte. So really good stuff there. Speaking of Will and Ronnie, the romance stuff, I was actually surprised worked for me. Will and Ronnie stuff at first, I was a little bit like, this seems a little forced. Like, you know, Will's just been chasing after Ronnie, and now they suddenly show interest in each other. It worked a little bit better later on when, you know, Ronnie's father kind of came into play in all of it. So like that started to work to me, but it felt like there was something earnest, like Will's treating Ronnie with respect and like accepting her fear, like, and Ronnie being like, I'm tired of being afraid, and like Will listening to that on her own terms, not just lusting after her that most stories about like boys who are interested in girls in these types of things usually get. And it's just like, well, we're gonna end up together because I'm with you. Like, I think the worst version of that actually in Stranger Things is Mike, right? I think his name Mike and 11 in Stranger Things. Like, I want to be clear. There's things that I like about Stranger Things. There's some things I really hate about Stranger Things as well. But there's things I like about Stranger Things, but Mike is not really one of them because his weird shit and possessiveness sometimes with 11 especially in later seasons. Which is sometimes dealt with, but it just makes me not like Mike that much as a character. And I like here that Will is not that kind of character. I also really liked, surprisingly, Marge and Rich bonding over gross shit, like the eye and like him peeing in a jar, made for each other. Love that. Like, again, we haven't seen a ton between those two characters, but we're able to see how quick, like the writing in this just makes them bond really well, that I like. We also have Lily getting isolated from the group. That clearly is Pennywise's intent to try and isolate her because, you know, he's her main target because she has the meteorite piece, and is pushing on her and her sense of, like, you know, her fear of being considered crazy, like in the school. And also, like, it's implied, it seems like not that Ronnie or Lily's getting, like, fallout was not their own emotions, but it seems to be having a little implication that Pennywise is sort of influencing their fears at each other to sort of push that, which I kind of found interesting. But the big thing here, though, that I think most people will be excited about, and I found very fascinating in a weird way, was the Mrs. Kirsch of it all, because Lily goes to see Mrs. Kirsch, and we learn that her dad was Pennywise. And I'm forgetting some of the lore. Maybe people in the comments will remind me here. But Pennywise was an actual dude, her father apparently, and then like the clown, it sort of killed him and took his identity and has been using him as like a thing to spread fear or whatever. I don't remember the exact specifics of how that all worked, and I'm sure the show will, you know, show that at some point, whether this season or in a future season. But I really liked the idea that Mrs. Kirsch, like, is kind of fully, like, she's clearly not fully there, which is interesting to pair her with Lily, because she is kind of what Lily fears to a degree, in that sense of, like, losing sense of reality, especially based off of, like, losing her father. So, like, Mrs. Kirsch is sort of an older version of what exactly Lily fears. So that's a good parallel there. But, like, Mrs. Kirsch being kind of aware that Pennywise is very dangerous, but can't get over it because she just sees her dad. And is, like, literally Pennywise can kill a kid in front of her, as we see in that flashback, which is great. But then just, like, sees her dad and wants her dad back. And so will do whatever for him, even feed other children to him. That's really kind of interesting as a parallel, and just a dynamic in sort of the Pennywise lore of it all. I'm curious to see where they're going to go with that, you know. It does touch upon some tropes that I'm not typically a fan of, which is like the crazy woman, but I think doing that alongside like so many other really strong written women like Charlotte and Lily herself and Marge, I think helps negate some of that. Like, this is the thing I was talking about in my Bury Your Gaze video that I did a little while ago. Like, the bury your gaze trope is just, it's not a thing if you have more queer characters within the story. You know, there's this really, one of my favorite shows is a HBO Max show called Veneno, which is about a trans woman. And like, trans characters die in that show, but the show has like 50 fucking trans characters. So like, it's fine. So kind of the same applies here when you have this like crazy woman trope. It works better for me, and I can actually have fun with it when you have a bunch of other well drawn out and written women elsewhere in the show. So, you know, it goes to show I can enjoy a fucked up messy trope, I mean, to an extent, if there's like other characters that counterbalance it within the narrative. Sometimes I will be clear, sometimes tropes are just fucked up no matter what you do. Like if you have like a racist trope in a thing, just even if you have a bunch of really well written black characters, it's still a racist trope. But I can still have fun with like a crazy lady in a thing for things like this. You know, and I you know, there's also want to be careful of it, like hopefully the show doesn't go too ableist in that direction. And I think give Mrs. Curse, like, you can kind of get into some camp stuff with her, which they're clearly doing with her costume at the end, but I think you can play with it in a kind of fun way. I already kind of touched upon Dick. I mean, obviously, as people reminded me, the whole box thing was a tie into Dr. Sleep, as Danny Torrance in Dr. Sleep sort of uses the same method that was taught to him by, I believe, Dick Halloran in that movie/book. I never read the book, only saw the movie. But I vaguely remember. I watched Dr. Sleep when it first came out, so it's been a hot minute for my memory. But people in the comments let me know that that's a tie-in to that stuff there. And I also kind of liked seeing this bar that we go to at the end that we spend sort of the end of the episode at. It kind of gave me, I mean, obviously it wasn't as well done just because of budget and TV and stuff, but it kind of gave me similar vibes to Sinners in the sense that we're seeing a part of Derry that is, you know, multicultural and, you know, uplifting and caring and getting to be a safe kind of space for different people to exist, especially marginalized people and especially black people in Derry. And of course, it's being confronted by these white racists who are about to show up because they want to lynch mob Hank. The only thing that I will say about that, like, I thought it worked really, really well. Like, again, it seems like, again, similar, like, without the spoiler, the thing that's in Sinners, the monster that is in Sinners, that I won't spoil for people in case they haven't seen it. It's a very similar dynamic to that movie. The only thing I didn't like about it is they made a point that the sheriff, who is leading the lynch mob essentially, was let go. He's no longer seen as being able to protect and serve, which, I mean, maybe they'll still do something with that overall, but it does seem to be the show doing a little bit of a pullback on its very salient critique that the police are a racist institution. And so it's saying like, oh, it's like trying to pull him away from this sort of like representation of the police being racist, which I think is a little bit sad. I think you probably could and should have left him just being the sheriff who was also doing racist shit. So I think that's something that I'm a little disappointed in the show about, for walking that back a little bit. But again, maybe it'll be able to pull it out somewhere else later on down the line and do something with it. But for right now, it kind of feels like they're kind of chickening out on more correct and sort of connection to racism and the institution of the police, because ACAB. I say ACAB. The show is not saying ACAB. That's kind of the problem. But that's pretty much everything. I'm curious to see what we're going to do more with Bill Skarsgård as just Pennywise, the actual person. Do we get the little piece of him here? Which I think is probably the reason Bill Skarsgård came back to the show. Because I was sort of, you know, from what I heard in some interviews and such, Bill Skarsgård was a little bit hesitant to come back to play Pennywise, like, been there, done that already. He's got other things going on in his career right now. So yeah, understandable that he'd be a little hesitant to try and redo something that he's already done. And what I'm guessing is this ability to play, only show up for half the season and get paid probably a lot of money also helped him. But also the fact that he gets to play Pennywise, like, in a different manner, I think is probably a thing that sold him on it. So I'll be curious to see what more we can do with that on the show. Otherwise, I think that's pretty much everything that I had. Curious to see where this is going to go. Overall, again, really great episode. I am really enjoying the show. What did you think, though? I'd love to hear all your thoughts down below. But beyond all of that, I hope you, my friends, live long and prosper.